cargo and combat gliders of World War II are fairly well known and were featured in many documentaries and movies. The one we will talk about today actually failed when competed against other designs, but it has an intriguing story and was such a unique aircraft it's worth taking a look. This was the huge General Airborne Transport XCG-16 glider. So let's see the history of this aircraft today. The gliders were used since the beginning of flight, and the militaries around the globe used them as well, but usually their main purpose was to train pilots. But between the two world wars, this started to change, as in Europe, both in Germany and in the Soviet Union, experiments started with bigger cargo gliders. The Germans were especially interested in these vehicles, as they were not restricted in the Versailles Treaty, which prevented Germany to develop its military. The assault glider as a way to carry troops into combat was a new idea at that time, and the Germans before and during World War II designed several different types, like the DFS-230 or the bigger, heavier GO-242, which was able to carry 23 troops. And finally the giant Messerschmitt Me-321, which could carry 130 men or even medium tanks. I have already made a video about the Me-321 Gigant, so if you're interested in its history, check it out. The combat gliders were not really considered viable options in most parts of the world at that time. But this soon changed after the first combat use of the DFS-230 type during the siege of Airborne fortress in May 1940. The assault was a great success and immediately caught the attention of militaries of the Allied countries as well. In 1941, the US Army Air Force also set out specifications for new combat gliders, based on the information learned about this German assault. These specifications asked for different size gliders, with the ability to carry 8 or 15 men. But soon the Army expressed the need for larger glider types as well, with a carrying capacity of at least 30 men or large artillery pieces. The specifications called for around 175 miles an hour towing speed and around 8,000 pounds load capacity. An experienced engineer, William Hawley Bolus, who already designed several gliders and other vehicles, was very keen to earn government contracts, so he set out to create a large glider in 1942, based on the design philosophy of Vincent Bernally, who pioneered the use of lifting bodies for aircraft. Here's a good example of his work, the Bernally UB-14. Bolus, with his partner Albert Kreis, set to work on their glider design. They imagined a high-wing aircraft with a lifting body, a twin-boom tail, a retractable tricycle undercarriage, and loading ramps in the front. The planned carrying capacity of this glider was 42 men, or 2 howitzers, or 2 jeeps. To test their design, they first built a half-size variant, which was also practical as they only had a small shop at the time, barely enough to build this prototype. This variant was completed in October 1942. It had a 46 feet wingspan and featured a twin-boom tail and a 2-seat open cockpit. The prototype was then taken to the Murok dry lake, and the test flights there were promising. The design handled well and built confidence the full-size variant will have a good chance to succeed. After the test flights, it was not dismantled or destroyed as many early designs, but it was actually later modified by Don Mitchell and turned into a flying wing aircraft. The little flying wing glider was flown several times at the dry lake, towed either by a car or a plane. Later the aircraft was modified further and received an enclosed cockpit and a tiny 4-cylinder 16 horsepower engine mounted in the nose. Bolus and Kreis organized the Airborne Transport Incorporated, which later became the General Airborne Transport Company, and started to lobby with their design, hoping to get a government contract. At first, there was a sizable pushback against their design. Apparently, their estimates of the design were too optimistic, and the Army's glider and material branches voiced serious concerns about the company's financial backing and capabilities. But other officials in Washington liked the Bolus design. Major Felix Dupont at the Air Transport Command and Colonel Landis at the Troop Carrier Command both voiced their opinion that the new flying wing glider design should be tested. The differing views of the branches led to an investigation of the company, and the report was anything but flattering. It stated the so-called factory was a small building previously used as a dry cleaning shop, barely 100 feet long and 30 feet wide, with very basic tools and drafting tables. Another worrying fact the investigation pointed out was that the list of would-be employees the company planned to hire all worked for different aircraft manufacturers, and as such, this glider project, should it go on, would interfere with production elsewhere. The back and forth over the design between different branches went on for months, but encouraged by the support of some officials, and apparently by the request of the office of Richard Dupont, the special assistant of General Harry H. Arnold and the brother of Major Felix Dupont, the work on the full-scale variant of the glider began. The full-size MC-1 closely followed the half-sized variant's design, but of course introduced some changes. The one easiest to spot is the different tail of the aircraft, which, though it was a twin-boom design, featured a single large vertical stabilizer in the center. The glider kept the flat lifting body design and the high-mounted wings. The pilot sat in tandem in the cockpit above the cargo bay, which could be loaded through the doors in the nose of the aircraft. Though it increased the weight, the design kept the retractable tricycle landing gear as well. The test flights of the prototype and X-21757 started in July 1943 at Marchfield, and the glider showed very good flight characteristics, and it made a good impression on the military observers as well. In August, Richard Dupont showed pictures of the MC-1 to General Harry H. Arnold, and got his approval for publicity for the glider. Dupont also suggested to General Lacoste he would like a contract placed for 1,000 units of the type. Based on the positive experiences and feedback, Bolus organized a demonstration for Army staff on 11th of September the same year. The glider was loaded with ballast to imitate the full load, and soon it took off for a presentation towed by a Lockheed C-60 transport plane. Between the passengers was Richard Dupont, and at the controls Colonel Ernest Gable. But this demonstration went terribly wrong. Not long into the flight, the glider accidentally flew into the prop wash of the C-60, which itself would have been a correctable mistake, but it quickly turned catastrophic, as the ballast in the glider was not secured correctly and it shifted to the back of the plane. The glider tilted backwards, losing control, and after several tries was cut off from the towing aircraft. The now uncontrollable giant glider entered the flat spin, unable to recover. 3 of the passengers managed to bail out, but only 2 survived the jump. Dupont lost his life when his parachute didn't open, just like Gable, who stayed at the controls and crashed with the plane. The crash of the MC-1 prototype was a big setback, but later the reports pointed out the reason for the crash was not the fault of the glider itself, but the combined effect of the inexperienced pilot who let the glider fly into the prop wash of the towing plane and the improper securing of the load. In light of the reports, the Army still kept its interest in the design, and though there were still many skeptics who saw the glider as unproven and stated a big order would be a gamble, the Washington officials again prevailed. In November, General Giles stated there is a need of at least 200 of this new glider by March 1944, and he originally planned to order a total of 1,000 units, but in just a few days this decision was changed, and a new contract for just 3 experimental models was announced, 2 units for flight tests and 1 as a static testbed. Upon receiving the contract, Albert Kreis stated they could deliver the 3 gliders not later than February the next year. But as it turned out, the company had difficulties keeping to the contract, and the first XCG-16 model was delivered months late. The original estimated cost of $625,000 was, as it turned out, overly optimistic as well. And by October, with the final approved overrun for the total price, the project ended up costing $2,150,000. The delivered XCG-16 prototype followed the design of the MC-1, featuring the twin boom tail design with 1 vertical fin and the lifting body with the tandem cockpit on the top. The glider in its final form was 48 feet 4 inches long, with a wingspan of 91 feet 10 inches. Its empty weight was 9,480 pounds, with a maximum takeoff weight of 19,540 pounds. For loading and unloading, the top half of the front of the glider could be opened up, with the bottom half creating a ramp. The large windows on the nose actually served a purpose, to help visibility for both the pilots and for the carried troops. Its planned load capacity was 42 troops or 10,000 pounds of other cargo, such as 2 105mm howitzers or 1 howitzer and its towing vehicle. The maximum towing speed of the glider was 220 miles an hour. The Army testing of the type started in Oxnard, California, then in August continued at the Clinton County Airfield in Ohio. During these trials, the glider was usually towed by a B-17 bomber. Though the type showed favorable flight characteristics, but the test flights also revealed many faults, such as inadequate crash protection, unsatisfactory loading ramps, the exits were too few and awkwardly placed, the flight equipment was not ergonomical, and the pilot had very restricted visibility, especially for the co-pilot who sat further back. The loading and unloading of the glider was also problematic. As to unload large cargo, the nose wheel had to be folded, so the glider rested on its belly. But experience showed the nose of the gliders often got damaged on landings, and that could prevent the opening of the cargo doors. In addition to the design problems, the project was way behind schedule, and it cost more than 3 times the original estimated price. Given the huge problems and delays, in November 1944, the military decided to cancel the project. By this time, the WWII CG-13 proved itself and soon entered service. This type was used on the Pacific and in the European theater as well, but not in combat, just as a troop carrier. The XCG-16 was a truly unique design for its time, and it's a great example how personal opinions and decisions altered the course of many vehicle designs during World War II. Though it never entered service, its interesting and somewhat tragic story and unique design makes it one of the most interesting aircraft of World War II. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.